Good afternoon. It's good to join you today. I'm Tim Culpin, a columnist at Bloomberg Gadfly. You can follow me on Twitter at TCULPAN, and if you do, you can tweet me some questions for these guys, and that way I won't have to do any work.
Yeah.
So you are my bots. I shall outsource my questions to you. We've got two very good speakers here, Max and Adi. One of them is going to get acquired in the next 6 months. I know that because the last 2 years at Rise, I've been on stage with Sunny Vu of Misfits Wearables. They went on to get acquired by Fossil for about 150 million. And then a few months after having Zach Nelson of NetSuite on stage last year, they went on to get acquired by Oracle for 9 billion. So I'm hoping it'll rub off again this year and one of you guys will get acquired for a bucket of money. So you heard it first here on stage. We're here to talk about bots, bots required and the role of bots in the mobile era. Of course, we know about Amazon Echo and Alexa. Siri has been around for a while, and of course, Google has Home, and there are so many more other devices coming out. And so we're going to talk really about how that's going to play out for the mobile ecosystem. I want to start with Adi, really, and if you can just tell us basically what you guys are doing and how you see this playing out in the next year or so in your space.
So Sisense is a company that helps other companies to understand their data in a better way. We allow companies all around the world to mash up information and present it as charts and of course, analytics to the end consumers. We started the project with bots a couple of years ago. And looking into the future, we see more and more of the, let's say, 80% of the company employees that are not tend to use analytics, using analytics through bots. So the vision is more users do analytics via bot platforms like Skype, Microsoft Teams, etc.
Right. And so it's really about the platform becoming more on the chat side rather than OS. Is that also the way you see it going forward?
Definitely, yes.
Max, tell us about what you guys are up to.
So Workfusion is in the space of intelligent automation. What that means is we create general-purpose robots for enterprise that watch people perform their work and then take over their job. Usually they're used in insurance, banking, healthcare, and it's anything from mortgage processing to invoice processing to loans and so forth and so on.
Right. One thing I want to ask you, Adi, in terms of everybody's got app fatigue, right? And there is just so many apps coming out there now, and I even see more startups out there that are trying to launch new apps. And I'm just telling them that unless your app cures cancer, don't bother. There is just too many apps out there. Is that going to be a natural funnel to make some clear platforms, such as, for example, we know WeChat in this part of the world and Line, but in the Western world, especially Facebook, with its WhatsApp, is going to move in that direction? Are we going to see much more building around those specific platforms rather than the OS? And how is that necessarily a good thing? Is that the way that it should develop? Or should it be back on the mobile OS as a way to develop bots and those intelligent systems?
It's a difficult question. We see a lot of apps that are very successful today, but definitely, as you said, very crowded space. So bringing an app to be the next Facebook or next Waze is almost impossible today, just due to the amount of apps out there. We see this increase also in chats. So platforms like Facebook, like Skype, allow you to provide your app via chatbot, but it also gets very crowded. So we're going to see in some way a lot of challenges in the chatbots that we see today in the apps, but it's still early days, so you can still be more successful in chat apps than in apps today.
Now, a lot of this is also happening at the back end, right? I mean, we've got a lot of this happening on the corporate side. A lot of the chatbots are really being taken up for the corporate side, B2B kind of use case scenarios. Do you see that necessarily being the way future, that'll be basically on the back end or in the corporate sphere? Or we'll see consumer adoption, a consumer facing like customer service being the bigger thing, or will it be kind of equally balanced? And how will the ecosystem develop accordingly?
I think the B2B and the B2C will act in a very similar way. We were discussing before about the evolution of communication. We see more and more of us are ditching the phone and the email and moving into chat apps. Same goes for B2B and B2C. The most successful apps today, chatbot apps, are actually into the consumer market, where you can get your next hotel or book your next, rent your next car. Also, insurance is moving towards chatbots. And yet, in the B2B market, which where I am located right now, you definitely see more need from the enterprise clients to incorporate these chat apps and help employees to be better, to perform better. So it's a mixture.
Now, how about for you guys? I mean, you're clearly in the B2B space more so than the consumer space. So I'd be guessing, you're in that camp. But does the development process, is it going to be different if you're dealing with more of a corporate environment, or maybe even chatbots with other machines? Or is it basically the same tools and the same processes as you develop?
Well, we see most enterprises moving to something that's called digital operations, which means they're trying to have robots, software robots, execute all parts of the customer interaction and system interaction. So going back to front, they call these things like systems of intelligence. So it's not only important to be able to interact with the customer, to take, through a robot and essentially understand that they want to file a claim, but what happens when you actually want to file a claim? You still don't want the human to be able to go and file the claim, because that sort of defeats the purpose. And that's what I think most people are missing, this part. It's all about chatbots, understanding. But the fact of the matter is, most chatbots right now are only doing FAQ, frequently asked questions. That's not very smart. What you want them to do is to be able to recognize that I'm filing a claim and pass the work over to another robot that actually is going to do the work of a human being, filing the claim and adjudicating the claim, right? So you're actually creating these chains of robots and leaving people sort of out of the loop. We have a good example with Standard Bank of South Africa. They had this customer onboarding. In order to open an account, it took 22 days for this 150-year-old bank.
Wow.
In South Africa. It's $170 billion, 22 days to open an account, because they had to do background check. When they took Workfusion, they put different robots from chat to compliance checking to everything else. They took this down to 22 minutes.
Wow, that's amazing.
It's amazing, yeah.
Now, this is a key point you bring up. We think about chatbots at the front end. It's like it's a UI or a UX, and we like or hate a chatbot by how you interact with it, either in a visual area through literally a text chat, or through an audio chat. But so much more needs to be put onto the back end, how that then hands over, as you talk about. Are we going to see companies doing much more of that supply chain, end-to-end solutions? Or do you think it'll be divided up into specific verticals where everybody's got their specific specialty? One will be really good at the front end, one will be doing the next step of the process. And then, of course, there'll have to be that, that connection between the two. How do you see that playing out?
So our belief is that you need to be able to do everything front to back, just creating the supply chain. Because if a chatbot can do what is called conversational understanding, if you understand it, it's not very good just to understand it and not do anything. If you go to your Echo, Alexa, and you give it a task that it doesn't know how to perform, it'll just tell you, well, I don't know how to do that, right? So I think creating, enterprises call this digital operations, right, where robots are handing over to each other, sort of like a manufacturing line. I mean, this whole fourth industrial revolution is really robots are doing knowledge work now, right? And chains of robots executing the work is where it's at, because that provides the biggest value. Because you're really talking about account opening process or invoice payments. So you're talking about real business processes that companies have versus, well, I'll just automate this conversation.
Talk to me then about how the human, interacts in this system, not just at the front end where a human is putting in a question, but the kind of the human in the loop idea of learning from the human. Because we talk about machine learning and AI, where the machine learns from itself and programs itself, but the human is part of that process, right? How are we going to be developing, or how do you see that development framework going forward as humans are learning to teach the computer, and the computer is learning the cues from the human on what they need to achieve?
Well, supervised machine learning in general, this is the big idea. This is why every publication out there talks about, well, the jobs are going to go away, and because now the paradigm has shifted from actually programming things and giving them logic to computers being able to learn and create programs on their own. So humans are a big part of that, because somebody needs to train them. So you think about Google's self-driving car. The driver actually trains the car over time to drive on its own.
Right.
But not by programming it, by really doing the actual driving. So it's called human in the loop. For instance, the way Workfusion works, automating work is by watching people perform their day-to-day tasks. So let's say customer service interactions around claims or invoices or loans processing, or even working on some let's say compliance work. And then over time, same like a self-driving car, they learn to, like an apprentice, to perform those tasks. And humans continue to stay in the loop because they sort of teach computers to do more and more difficult things.
Right.
Where does it end? It ends pretty high up on the stack, but
Well, that's still being worked out, isn't it? Yeah.
So we see Workfusion as a forcing function for people to get re-educated into higher level tasks, for sure, because we push from the bottom.
Back to the consumer area, Adi. I mean, we've seen Alexa, amazing takeoff in Alexa over the last few years. And that's very much on the consumer area. And it's a very consumer kind of idea. You ask for playing music or to dim the lights, or of course order products, which is in many ways the end goal. How do you see that ecosystem developing? Obviously, there's ways you can plug into that ecosystem. Others can get into that ecosystem if they want. It's been opened up. But Google has one as well, and Apple also has Siri. How is this going to be a winner take all? And how can each of them find their own kind of niche? And what do you think those niches will be between those three major ones right now?
So we definitely see Amazon today as the leader in let's say, voice interaction chatbots. I think their magic was the ability to open their system. So you can see tens of thousands of new services or skills, as they say, including the Sisense ones, to enable me as a developer, us as a company, to take our end-to-end platform and present it in a different way. So very similar, by the way, to what Max said. Be a platform, do everything, and have your domain expertise. Once Amazon did that, gave us the ability to create skills on our own, custom skills, suddenly we see more and more of the financial industry, real estate industry, is using these kind of devices for a machine in the loop. Because in many cases we are going to let's say our building, and you have your concierge. Can your concierge be this echo device? And maybe if we need more information, we can go to the actual person. And this is what I think where the real magic of Amazon lays down, and this is where Siri and Google Home fails at this point. The ability to provide with infinite amount of skills, which have domain expertise, and then almost every question that you ask will be answered according to the domain. So that's where I see the market right now.
But Google should be able to do that. I mean, that's who they are as well, right?
It's all about execution. They can do that. They decided that to pay less attention. It's not that they're not trying to. Maybe it's too late.
It's too late. The race is on so early, and they think it's too late. How about Siri? I mean, they were the first ones out there, Apple, right? Siri was a revelation when it was launched, but it's kind of gone nowhere, right? And I know personally there's a lot of frustration within Apple, within the Siri camps within Apple, that like, how are we not leading this, especially with Alexa coming up so quickly?
I'll give you an example.
Yeah, go ahead.
We all need to look at our kids or our children and see what's the future will lay down. I see my boy that is 3 years old. He's not speaking English as natural as a mother-born language, and he's speaking to Alexa, and he cannot speak to Siri. Basically, he's going to the living room and ask, "What's the weather today? Is it going to rain today? Can you play me some funny songs?" and so on and so on. And this is a 3 years old kid. And for doing that with Siri, he needs to go to the phone, he needs to put the code and then click, for a few seconds, and it's frustrating him. If it's easy for kids, it's definitely easy for the entire market, and that's why Amazon is winning the market.
And for Apple, you talk about you have to go up and you have to unlock, you have to press a button. You're almost halfway there to getting done what you want to get done. Whereas this always on, always listening idea of Alexa, you just speak. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to do anything. I mean, a 3-year-old, it comes naturally, right? I mean, he's living in an area where the opposite never existed. He's always facing that. As he grows up, he'll always know that there's a digital assistant listening.
Consumer of the future.
Right, exactly. Is that something that you think Apple can catch up on? Do they have to totally reprogram the way they approach this?
It's like the approach of Tesla, I guess, open source everything and keeping your IP in the same time. Apple is lacking that. So I don't see a bright future for Apple in this sense.
Right. Now, in terms of the back end, obviously Amazon, Max, they've got their own reasons for doing what they want to do. E-commerce is a big part of what they do, but they want to go into other areas. Do you think Google will have as good or a better chance to tap into the back end, to the commercial side, the B2B side, all this back end stuff that we talk about? Or do you think Amazon will also do just as well there to plug in to the back end and the commercial side that commercial customers might want?
Well, I think none of them will do well in the commercial space because the specifics of working in an enterprise environment, again, think about enterprises hire people to work inside because they work on their own specific systems. They have their own data entry systems. No Google or Amazon are going to be able to connect to these systems or put robots there. So, what you need to do is to be able to take robots and place them inside the organization. So that's totally different. I think where Google is going to do well is in this Q&A space, question and answer, because they have a massive amount of information. So right now you go to Echo or Alexa, you ask it a question about weather or something else, it can give you an answer, but might be not as good as Google can, searches. Whereas, Amazon maybe will do very well in e-commerce, like buy me this or play this music or something like that. So I think they'll separate in these two. Google's going to do what they do well, which is provide you with information, but none of them will be able to go inside the enterprise and put robots there, like something like what we do.
Right. I mean, with Alexa, Siri, Echo, all of them, one thing I've noticed is they're all female voices. What's with that, Adi? I mean, you got thoughts on that? I mean, is it just we like to listen to females more, or is it we feel more comfortable with that?
It's a good question. Guys who develop chatbots, who develop voice interaction, think like guys. It's in our core. This is how we evolve. It doesn't mean it's a good thing. So definitely we want to see more women developing these kind of chat apps. I do see research in the States about why we like to first call it by women name and then why we like to hear women voice. Apparently it's like more of the command thing. Why we're commanding Siri, why we're commanding Alexa. This should be changed, in my opinion. We need more diversity.
More voices in the chatbots?
Mm-hmm. More default voices. We don't need a default voice to be a woman. Or women, we need to have a mixture, or just do an A/B test. What everybody wants to do. Don't just assume that it's a female and she needs to get commands. Maybe you need to be polite. Maybe it needs to be a guy or a kid or whatever.
This is a chance to actually reprogram our thinking about it, I guess.
Yes.
So final question, because we're running out of time. Okay, 10 years from now, Siri, Amazon, and Google, will they all survive, or who will be leading? Max?
I think Amazon is still gonna be there with shopping, but there'll be a lot of other players. I think this is just the beginning of this market, and there's also a brain-to-computer interface that maybe is a much more efficient interface than just voice, right? So might just blow by that and go to brain-computer interface.
That scares me.
I'm betting on that because this is going to be good stuff.
Hardwired. What about you, Adi? You have thoughts?
The future is wherever most information will be stored. So as Max said, Google is the best in searching data. Just taking this into a better interface today will definitely put them on, the race in the future. And Amazon definitely, their ecosystem is just amazing. They just keep evolving.
Does not look good for Apple in this space, I've got to say. All right, so we're out of time. Thank you very much for your time. Please give them a round of applause, and thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Good work. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Adi.